You are about to cross into a world where fear is real. Real stories, unexplained phenomena, where the supernatural lurks in the shadows. From the portal of dread.
I have been waiting for you. Welcome to my domain, the portal of dread. Here, each story is not merely a tale, but a portal I open directly to your worst nightmares. With me, fear is not just told, it is felt in the soul. Turn off the light. Lock the door. Let your own breath guide you through the inevitable labyrinth of madness. If you possess the foolish courage to cross this threshold, subscribe to the channel. And to prove your insolence, type in the comments, "I am not afraid." Now, prepare yourself, the unknown is already here. Today's story, the Pharmacy of Lost Souls. Ever felt that silent, crushing despair when someone you love is suffering and the doctors say there's nothing left to do? That moment at 3 a.m. in a hospital room when you stare at the ceiling and think, I'd do anything to save them. It's the kind of hopelessness that eats you alive, that makes you question everything you believe in. But what if I told you that in that moment of absolute vulnerability, some people actually find a way out? A place where the impossible becomes possible, where science meets something far older and far darker. We've all been there. That paralyzing desperation, that feeling that you'd move mountains, make deals, sacrifice anything for the person you love. Tell us in the comments, how far would you go to save someone you love? Because today, we're uncovering just how far some people are willing to go, and the real price of that choice. Imagine the sickly sweet stench of dried herbs mixed with something your gut can't quite place. Something that makes your stomach twist for no reason. The muffled sound of a mortar and pestle grinding away in a back room, while a voice murmurs words in a language you've never heard before. Now imagine this isn't some backwoods ritual hut. It's a pharmacy. A regular compounding pharmacy with a health department license, prescription pads, the whole 9 yards. But the bottles on those shelves, they hold secrets modern medicine never dared to touch. Feel that creepy crawly on the back of your neck, that primal instinct screaming at you to run, even though your brain insists nothing's wrong. That clash between what you see and what you feel is what makes some places special. Deep in the heart of Goiânia, Brazil, back in 2017, there was a pharmacy where desperate people found impossible cures. Where mothers with terminally ill kids walked out with their children saved. Where incurable diagnoses turned into medical miracles no doctor could explain. But here at the Portal of Dread, we know miracles always come with a price. And the one paying isn't always the one who gets healed. The story we're telling today is about a woman who discovered that price in the most terrifying way possible. Natália Gomes was 42. A powerhouse in Goiânia's business world. Jet black hair cascading over her shoulders like a curtain, sharp eyes that never flinched from a challenge, and a personality that turned problems into solutions before anyone else even saw the issue. Owner of 3 pharmacies in the capital, Natália wasn't the superstitious type. If a supplier flaked, she had 2 backups ready. If an employee called out, she'd jump behind the counter without hesitation. A problem is just opportunity in disguise, she'd say, adjusting her glasses while crunching numbers late into the night. Her routine was clockwork. Wake at 5:30 a.m., review reports from all 3 locations over black coffee, no sugar, visit each store during the day to check inventory and service, then end the night in her home office planning expansions. She was a woman who'd built a pharmaceutical empire on pragmatism, efficiency, and an almost religious obsession with control. Natália knew every penny that moved through her business, every supplier, every licensed pharmacist in the region. Her analytical mind catalogued data like a supercomputer, profit margins per medication, disease seasonality, even the buying habits of regular customers. But in September 2017, something shattered that meticulously controlled routine. It started with weird comments from long-time customers. Mrs. Maria, a diabetic for 15 years who religiously bought insulin every week, casually mentioned she'd found a special pharmacy with miracle compounds. Old man Antonio, who'd had chronic heart issues for a decade, showed up beaming, saying he no longer needed meds after treatment at a different pharmacy across town. At first, Natália just frowned and filed it away. Competition was nothing new, and compounding pharmacies promising exclusive formulas were a dime a dozen. She knew the Goiânia market like the back of her hand, every lab partner, distributor, and competitor's marketing trick in the book. But when the third customer in a week, Mrs. Conceição, an elderly woman with severe arthritis who could barely grip a pen, walked in pain-free, talking about her complete cure at a pharmacy she couldn't even place on a map. That's when Natália noticed something her analytical brain couldn't categorize. All these people had the same subtle strangeness in their eyes, like they'd seen something they weren't meant to see. Natália's investigation began like any market analysis, methodical, objective, by the numbers. She mapped every licensed compounding pharmacy in Goiânia, cross-referenced health department records, checked old phone books, even scoured the internet. She called colleagues, verified municipal permits and state licenses. Not a single pharmacy matched the vague descriptions her customers gave. It was while talking to Mr. Roberto, a loyal customer for 8 years who bought blood pressure meds, that she first heard a name that made her skin crawl: Cerrado Pharmacy. The man, miraculously cured of decades of chronic gastritis, described a place in an old house at the end of a dirt road smelling like wild plants and something else you can't quite name. But when Natália asked for the exact address, something deeply unsettling happened. Mr. Roberto froze mid-sentence, his eyes glazing over like he was trying to access a blocked memory. All he said with an eerie smile was, "Ah, Ms. Natália, when someone really needs it, they find the way on their own." Other customers gave similarly unnerving answers. Vivid descriptions of the pharmacy's interior. A dark wooden counter with weird carvings, thick glass bottles on the shelves, and a smell like cassava root mixed with honey and something bitter that turns your stomach. But not a single one could give clear directions or remember the route. It was like they'd all dreamed of the same impossible place. Natália's professional curiosity morphed into something darker when she noticed a terrifying pattern. Every cured person had found this pharmacy at their absolute lowest. Terminal diagnoses, unbearable chronic pain, situations where conventional medicine had thrown in the towel. And there was one other detail that chilled her to the bone. None of them had paid a dime for their treatment. The pharmacist said I'd pay later. They'd all repeat with the same unsettling smile. When the time comes. It was on a sweltering Thursday afternoon, the September sun baking the asphalt, when Dona Jurema walked into Natália's main pharmacy. The old prayer woman, 70 if she was a day, with snow-white hair in a simple bun and a faded cross tattoo on her right arm, wasn't a customer. She'd never set foot in the store before, but she strode in like she owned the place, ignoring the line, and walked straight up to Natália with a look that made the whole room fall silent. "You've been asking about the pharmacy that shouldn't exist," the old woman said, her voice low but razor-sharp. "Stop while you still can." Natália, ever practical, tried to smile and brush it off as market research. But Dona Jurema cut her off with a sharp gesture. "Girl, I know when evil's circling, and it's circling you." The old woman leaned over the counter, her pale eyes boring into Natália. "That place ain't no pharmacy. It's an altar. And what they call a pharmacist ain't human like us." Then it happened. The air in the pharmacy grew heavy, thick like the calm before a storm. Every fluorescent light flickered in sequence, a strange electrical hum vibrated through the walls, and a sickly sweet stench, like rotting fruit mixed with dried herbs, filled the room. Natália felt a creepy, crawly sensation up her spine, every hair on her body standing on end. For one terrible second, she swore she heard the distant, rhythmic thud of a mortar and pestle, echoing from somewhere that didn't exist. Customers in line shifted nervously. 2 kids started crying for no reason. Donna Jurema just nodded grimly, like this was exactly what she'd expected. "He already knows you're looking," she whispered, before turning and walking out, leaving only the echo of her final words. "And now, he's gonna want to meet you." Natália spent 3 sleepless nights after Donna Jurema's visit. Her rational mind rejected what had happened, the flickering lights, that nauseating smell, the impossible sound of the mortar. Electrical issues and psychological suggestion, she repeated to herself, but her hands shook as she typed up reports. The following Monday, she made a decision that would change everything. She'd conduct a real, systematic investigation. If there was a rogue pharmacy operating in her city, she'd find it using the methods she knew: research, data, logic. She started by re-interviewing every customer who'd mentioned the mysterious pharmacy. Armed with a notebook and pen, Natália asked specific questions: times, landmarks, street names. She wanted to map the exact location of this ghost competitor. But the answers only unsettled her more. When pressed for details, Mr. Roberto grew visibly agitated. He broke into a cold sweat. His hands trembled, and he mumbled, "I can't remember the way. It's like the memory slips away." Mrs. Maria had a similar reaction. She'd start explaining the route, but the words came out jumbled, contradictory, as if someone had scrambled her recollections. They all agreed on one thing. The pharmacy was in an old house at the end of a dead-end street. Frustrated, Natália changed tactics. For 2 weeks, she spent her afternoons driving through Goiânia's oldest neighborhoods, especially the outskirts where colonial-era houses still stood. She looked for any building that could hide a clandestine pharmacy, basements, abandoned townhouses, places with suspicious activity. It was in the Campinas district, on a suffocating October afternoon, that she finally found something. A cobblestone street ended abruptly in a vacant lot. But there, nearly hidden between 2 massive pequi trees, stood a house that time seemed to have forgotten. Old brick construction, with a small, faded sign she could barely read. Curado Herbs, traditional compounding. Natália's heart raced. The house radiated a heavy, oppressive atmosphere. The windows were tinted black, blocking any view inside, and a sweet, chlorophyllic stench, like fresh plants mixed with something fermented, drifted from the place. She parked 50 meters away and watched for nearly an hour. No one entered or left. There was no visible movement, but something was deeply wrong. Birds avoided flying over the house. Stray dogs that normally sniffed around any property walked straight past without a glance, as if an invisible barrier repelled them. When Natália finally gathered the courage to approach, her legs trembled involuntarily. The front door was solid wood, with carved details that looked like symbols she couldn't identify. A small brass plaque read, "Open only to those who truly need it." There were no business hours, no phone number, not even a visible doorbell. But as she reached out to knock, something icy touched the back of her neck. A raspy voice whispered right by her ear, "You've come at just the right time." Natália spun around, her heart pounding so hard she felt it in her throat. Behind her stood a man who looked like he'd stepped out of a well-crafted nightmare. He was in his 60s, but his skin had the strange texture of someone who'd spent decades handling chemicals. Dark patches on his hands, deep wrinkles that looked more like scars, and yellowed nails that curved like claws. He wore an old white lab coat, stained with what could have been medicine or dried blood. But it was his eyes that unsettled her most. Completely white, no visible irises, like 2 milky pearls embedded in his face. And yet, Natália was absolutely certain he could see her perfectly. "Name's Sebastião," he said, his voice rough, like it hadn't been used in years. "And you must be the curious pharmacy owner who's been asking the wrong questions." The air around them grew dense again, just like when Donna Jurema had visited her store. But this time it was worse, much worse. The temperature dropped at least 10 degrees in seconds. A fine mist formed on the ground, and that sickly sweet stench became so overpowering Natália had to cover her nose. How do you know who I am?" she managed to ask, fighting the urge to bolt. Sebastião smiled, revealing teeth that were too small for his mouth, all pointed like a carnivore's. I know many things, Ms. Natália. I know you own 3 pharmacies. I know you lost your father at 17 to cancer the doctors couldn't cure. I know you're afraid of dying without leaving a legacy. Every word he spoke made the air heavier. The trees around them stopped swaying completely, as if even the wind was afraid to get too close. And I know, he continued, stepping closer, that you'll need my services very soon. Natália felt her legs give way, a sudden dizziness washing over her. For one terrible moment she swore she saw shadows moving in the dark windows behind the man. What do you want from me? She whispered. Nothing you won't give me willingly, Sebastião replied, before literally vanishing into thin air, leaving only the echo of a laugh that sounded like bones snapping. Natália made it home, shaking uncontrollably. She downed 2 glasses of whiskey, trying to stop the tremors. But the alcohol did nothing to dull the terror that had settled into her bones. Sebastião knew intimate details of her life she'd never told anyone. How could he know about her father's death, her deepest fears? For 3 days, she tried to forget the encounter. She buried herself in work with a near-desperate obsession, rechecking inventories that were already organized, redoing spreadsheets that didn't need redone, personally waiting on customers she'd normally delegate. Anything to keep her mind occupied and away from that cursed house. But on Wednesday night, at 11 p.m., as she was closing out the numbers for her main pharmacy, her phone rang. Unknown number. Natália, Sebastião's raspy voice said, as if he was speaking inside her head. The time has come. What time? What are you talking about? She yelled into the phone, but all she heard was static in response. Then the call came. Diego, her employee at the South Sector Pharmacy, was sobbing uncontrollably. Ms. Natália, please, you've got to come here now. Something terrible happened. She arrived at the pharmacy in 15 minutes to find fire trucks, ambulances and police cars out front. Diego ran up to her, his face as white as paper. It was Marcela, he managed between sobs. She was organizing the controlled substances when she just collapsed. The doctors say it's some kind of severe chemical poisoning, but they can't identify the substance. Natália felt the world spin. Marcela was only 23, like a daughter to her. A hard-working girl, a pharmacy student who worked part-time to pay for school. The fire department evacuated the pharmacy, Diego continued. They think some bottle leaked a toxic substance, but they can't find anything. It's like the poison just appeared out of nowhere. At the hospital, Natália stayed by Marcela's bedside for hours. The girl was unconscious, hooked up to machines, her skin taking on a terrifying yellowish hue. The doctors were clear. Without identifying the toxin, she'd die within days. It was at 4 a.m. when Sebastião appeared in the hospital hallway. He walked calmly up to Natália, his steps making no sound on the linoleum floor. The 2 security guards at the ICU glanced right at him, but continued their conversation as if they hadn't seen a thing. Marcela's a good kid, he said, stopping beside Natália. It'd be a shame to lose her because her boss was too curious. This was you, Natália whispered, her voice breaking with hatred and despair. You did this to her. Me? No, Ms. Natália, this was just coincidence. But I can fix her problem. Sebastião leaned in closer. I have an antidote no doctor in this city knows about, a compound that can heal her completely. What do you want in exchange? Your main pharmacy, the building, the inventory, the customers, everything. It becomes my new official branch. His milky eyes seemed to glow in the dim hallway light. And you keep running it like you always have. The only difference is sometimes I'll need you to serve special customers with medications I provide personally. Natália looked through the ICU glass at Marcela. The girl was visibly worsening by the hour. If I agree, she's completely cured. Completely. Like nothing ever happened. And if I refuse? Sebastião smiled with his pointed teeth. Then tomorrow, you'll have to explain to her parents why you couldn't save her when you had the chance. Natália signed the papers on a makeshift table right there in the hospital hallway at 5 a.m. while nurses rushed past, oblivious to the transaction happening in front of them. Sebastião had brought a handwritten contract on yellowed parchment, the ink shifting colors as the light hit it. "Just a formality," he said, offering an old-fashioned quill pen. "To keep everything nice and orderly." When Natália finished signing her name, she felt a sharp burning in her right hand. She looked down and saw a small cross-shaped scar on her palm, a mark that hadn't been there seconds before. "Now we're partners," Sebastião whispered before vanishing into thin air again. 20 minutes later, Marcela woke up completely healed. The doctors called it a spontaneous, miraculous remission, but Natália knew the truth. The girl remembered nothing. She'd simply passed out while organizing meds and woken up in the hospital. In the following days, Natália's life returned to normal. On the surface, the main pharmacy operated exactly as before. She still arrived early, checked inventory, served customers, reviewed spreadsheets. But now, once a week, Sebastião appeared after closing. He brought unmarked dark glass bottles filled with strange liquids, colored powder packets with no labels, and capsules that seemed to glow from within. "Special medications for special customers," he'd always explain with that unsettling smile. And the special customers did come. Desperate people with terminal illnesses, unbearable chronic pain, situations where conventional medicine had given up. They always arrived at the end of the day, after the regular customers had left, as if they knew exactly when to find what they were looking for. Natália served them with a knot in her stomach, handed out Sebastião's nameless medicines, and watched these people walk out completely healed. But with that same strange glint in their eyes she'd noticed in her old customers. They never paid a cent. "They'll pay when the time comes," Sebastião always said when she asked about payment. And Natália, who once was a practical woman who believed only in what she could see and control, now knew she'd become an accomplice to something far bigger and darker than she could comprehend. Every night before bed she'd stare at the cross-shaped scar on her palm and wonder what the real price would be, the one she and all those healed customers would eventually have to pay, and when that time would come for Sebastião to collect. 6 months later, Dona Jurema returned to Natália's main pharmacy. The old prayer woman entered in the middle of the afternoon during the lunch rush, but this time she didn't cut the line. She waited patiently for her turn, bought a cheap bottle of hand sanitizer, and only then approached the counter where Natália was organizing prescriptions. "You made your choice," she said simply, her voice low but heavy with profound sadness. Natália looked up from the papers and met the old woman's piercing gaze. For a moment she wanted to deny it, to explain that she'd had no choice, that Marcela would have died if she hadn't made the deal. But the words wouldn't come. "I tried to warn you," Dona Jurema continued, resting her gnarled hands on the counter. "Tried to tell you that place wasn't a pharmacy. It was an altar. And now you've become a priestess to something you don't understand. I saved a life," Natália managed to whisper. "You saved one to damn hundreds." The old woman shook her head slowly. "Every person who walks out of here healed with his medicines owes a debt. And when they come to collect, God have mercy." Dona Jurema turned to leave but paused at the door. "The mark on your hand will grow," she said without looking back. "And when it covers your whole palm, you'll understand what kind of deal you really made." After the old woman left, Natália looked at the cross-shaped scar on her right palm. Lately, she'd had the feeling it was getting bigger. Outside, the Goiás sun continued to bake the asphalt as it always had. Customers came and went as usual, picking up their conventional meds, their vitamins, their headache pills. And Natália kept serving, smiling, organizing, being the competent pharmacist she'd always been. But now she knew that somewhere in the city, in an old house at the end of a dead-end street, Sebastião was preparing new unmarked bottles. And the line of desperate people willing to pay any price for a cure would never end. Thanks for braving this dark night with us at the Portal of Dread. Now tell us, would you have the guts to go through with it? Drop a comment if you can sleep tonight. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell to get more spine-chilling stories every week. Sleep tight, if you can. Until next time, good night, and see you in the next Portal of Dread video.